Guide to abandoned ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition. Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh, and we have Blake returning again this week to chat all about finding Middle-earth in a galaxy far, far away. That's right. We're going to be talking about how Lord of the Rings and Star Wars compare and all the different things that tie them together, both story-wise and cinema-wise. And of course, we've got Bring Home the Bounty week 11, I believe it is, and a few other things to talk about. New books releasing, the craziness around Star Wars Eclipse, and Book of Boba Fett right around the corner. So, let's get into it.
Another happy landing.
Do you trust them?
I trust them to work in their own self-interest.
I bear the mayor's heartfelt welcome.
Keep an eye on that one.
I keep an eye on everyone.
I'm here to talk business.
The Book of Boba Fett, streaming December 29th, only on Disney+.
All right, welcome back to the show, Mr. Blake.
Thank you. Always a good time. Look forward to it every week.
Oh, same here. Always good hanging out with friends and chatting Star Wars. A new Book of Boba Fett teaser dropped, which I assume is going to be the last one. And it was,
Yeah, it's pretty similar. And there is a lot of recycled footage. But in this one, we get a little extra dialogue, which is kind of neat. Which is kind of proves, well, like, it's to be expected, but it proves that he doesn't trust them. But he hopes that if he dangles the carrot in front of them, that they'll follow. Which, if he's planning to rule with respect, is more or less his only option. So,
yeah, it's it's going to be very interesting to see how he approaches this new job, sitting on Jabba's throne, basically controlling Hutt space, which is a bit almost too much for a single guy and his companion. So, I'm very curious to see how this works out. I feel like this is the story of the Star Wars underworld at this point in time, going forward. That's going to affect the events that happen later in the next stories. It's going to be cool to see what happens, because that's something that Clone Wars was really cool, really good about doing. Like they didn't just feature the Republic and the Separatists for every episode for 7 seasons worth of the show. Like, it was very diverse in the sense that you had all these different parties that got featured, and these different sides of the galaxy that were all affected by this experience that was going on simultaneously. So lots of underworld episodes with the bounty hunters and all that stuff. Very cool stuff.
Actually, that actually makes me realize is we're kind of getting that now. It's just, It's not one series. So instead of just the Clone Wars about all these different, you get like the battle-hardened soldiers with the clones, and then you get the Jedi stories and their adventures, and you get these one-off bounty hunter things. We're kind of getting that now, but instead of it being one show, it's different shows that are all kind of like less episodes. So it's like they just grouped them together and rebranded them.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess, that'll be interesting to see. I don't really have too much to say about the new teaser personally, but
this is the first time that we've seen this new Twi'lek, isn't it?
This is about the second time I think that we've seen the Twi'lek, but it's the first time that I think we've heard him speak and say anything. So little more context, I guess, for his appearance. But
it seems kind of neat. Someone approaching Boba. I really like that first shot though, and speculating a bit on the Trandoshans.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess it's the second shot.
that is kind of interesting. I never actually. I mean, I knew. I guess from Clone Wars, we know that the Trandoshans have a bit of a thing going on with hunting the younglings, like the Jedi, and then hunting them down for sport, and along with a couple other, they just kidnap random people, but the Jedi is kind of the prize, right? And
Yeah,
so is
they're
the Wookiee, because
yeah.
Chewbacca makes an appearance in that arc as well. So
They're
it kind of makes you wonder,
poachers
though,
usually.
yeah, and like aside from that, we don't really get a whole lot of context for what the other, because I'm just assuming that's just a group of their species that does that for sport. There's other Trandoshans out there, but it's like, what do most of them actually do with their times? Like, we don't really know. So maybe
It's
this is
true.
like the first ever Trandoshan based crime syndicate or something that's going on, right? Like, maybe we'll get a bit more connection to their home world and stuff like that, which is
I'm still holding out hope that these are like the leaders of the Bounty Hunters Guild, but we'll see what happens on that.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, that would be very cool.
I do trust Dave to kind of like weave that all together, bring it back into canon. I don't think anyone else would, but Dave, I think, has the possibility to do it. So, here's hoping, but we'll see what happens. And there's that dog creature guy kind of on the group there. So maybe it's not all Trandoshans, right? So there's a little bit of credence to that. But yeah, maybe it is just a different, group of, like, a smaller band of crime syndicate or whatever. Maybe they used to work with Jabba or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's going to be good. It's going to be a cool show. I mean, we got a few more flashes of that moped race.
Yeah. Well, I got one more thing to point out the Trandoshans before we move on, though.
Sure.
Because live action, I think we've only seen Bosk up to this point. Other than that, it's just been animated. And so it's neat to see that, like, the facial structures, like the costumes of these specific Trandoshans, they look like they're of the same, like, model design as what we saw in the Clone Wars, which is kind of cool. Like, they're not just all duplicates of Bosk. Like, they actually look like faces that we saw in the Clone Wars.
Right. Yeah. A bit more kind of different between all of them, right?
Yeah, so, like blocky eyebrows and everything.
Yeah, that is, like, really cool. Definitely. So, and we get a clear glimpse at, like, 2 or 3 of them in this trailer too, which is awesome.
Neat. I
gotta say, I can't remember if we've ever seen a shirtless Gamorrean guard before, but it's tripping me out.
Because they usually just have vests, right?
Yeah, they normally have vests on, and I'm pretty sure the last time we saw Gamorrean guards, they were wearing those, like, I don't know, they may have been shirtless, but I don't know. It's almost like without the vest and everything, they almost look more human with a pig head, right? Like it's like they weren't, like, they were like that before, but now they just look even weirder because I'm looking at, like, a big man. Dude. Yeah, just a big guy, and then his face is like, a pig.
As Kramer once said, "Pigman! Pigman!" Little Seinfeld reference for you there.
Everyone over the age of 30 is, like, laughing.
Yeah, because actually I don't have any idea what I'm talking about.
I've seen a few episodes of Seinfeld. It's all right. It's pretty good.
If you like Friends, you'll like Seinfeld. It's like a better version.
That's a bold statement.
I stand by it. My wife's told me the same thing, and she used to be a Friends fan, so I think it's legit.
Oh, wow. That's it then. That's it. Bit of news. The podcast is now available through a new vendor or a new host site. If anyone listens to podcasts on Podcast Republic, we're now streaming on Podcast Republic as well, which is one more avenue to get a hold of Star Wars Escape Pod. So
it's a fitting name for a Star Wars podcast.
Oh yeah, the Republic.
That's right.
This podcast is now part of the Republic.
We will sign your treaty.
The Republic could not have come up with a client so quickly.
They're actually pretty good at that.
My Dooku. I've been practicing my Dooku impression in the shower.
Oh, that's why. That makes sense. You're doing good work. Keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, man. I'm running low on the soap.
Oh my gosh. You could honestly do like decent impressions, do some bits or something.
We were playing an RPG recently with Bryce, and we had a pretty good time doing the RPG, custom RPG. We had you had a pretty nice a Mayfield accent going on.
Accidental, but yep. I was just trying to do Brooklyn.
Yeah, yeah, and I played the Vin Diesel of the Star Wars universe, so that was pretty fun. And at some point we got to record these RPG sessions, or at least do one, like a one shot, like what we did that night, under 2 hours, and then just do it over recording, so that we can try and get a good entertainment experience out of it for all our listeners.
Will people actually want to listen to that?
I think it was pretty good. We had a pretty good time doing that, and I think I don't know. I mean, Critical Role is so popular, and mind you, they're pro,
yeah,
right?
But they also do improv, like
right. Yeah, they do a lot of improv. Well, yeah, exactly. They're also like they're in itself, they're voice actors and entertainers, so it's professional. But yeah, I don't know. We give it a go at some point. It's always been
see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think that's the whole idea.
Next game, I want one of these Vespas. These Vespas in the Boba Fett trailer here.
Yeah, these Star Wars Vespas. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty cool little design. I don't really know what to think of it other than
it doesn't belong on Tatooine.
No,
in my opinion.
No, it doesn't. Mind you, and I don't even know if this is Tatooine. I'm just assuming that it is. It could very well be a different planet, because I know we've seen glimpses of a different planet on other teaser trailers that looks similar, but it's. I don't know. It could be a new city or something, like a new settlement that is on Tatooine, because it does look like it could be Tatooine with all the domed gray or beige buildings and stuff.
I'm still hoping it's Mos Espa, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I would love to see Mos Espa again. I mean, it's a city we haven't seen since Attack of the Clones, which was first introduced in the Phantom Menace, and that was it, right? And never went.
We spent a lot of time in Phantom Menace there, and then just kind of never went back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what happened to Shmi's house? I mean, yeah, let's get that story. Nobody cares about Shmi's house.
Figure out who's moved in there, like maybe the slumlord that controls it.
Yeah, right. You know who moved in there is the old lady that asked Rey what her name is.
Oh, I could see that.
Who are you?
Yeah. She's roommates with the lady who's talking about her bones aching. My bones are aching, Annie. Storm's coming.
Is that what she said?
Something like that.
I don't think she says my bones are aching.
Yeah, she does. 100%. She says that. That's the part I know she says.
She says Storm's coming, Annie. I don't know if she says.
Yeah, no, my bones are aching. I guarantee it.
She says Storm's coming, Annie. You better get home quick.
I'm pretty sure there's a bones thing in there.
That'd be something you would say. Throw Blake, the old man, into Star Wars somewhere. Maybe you're like 70 or something, sitting on the street of Tatooine, and the first and only thing you say while people are walking by is, "My bones are aching."
Yeah. No, probably more along the lines of, "Oh, my bones are aching. Storms are brewing." There we go. You can ADR that into the movie.
Yeah, exactly. The Star Wars escape pod cut.
That's right.
Everyone's got a cut. We got to make our own cut in the movie. So yeah, let's a couple things are dropping onto the Star Wars shelves, the merchandise. And we love the Star Wars Black Series helmets, which is pretty sweet. Those Hasbro Black Series helmets never get old. They're super high quality. And now we're getting a Bo-Katan helmet dropping in the new year at some point, which is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be a whole new mold, because they got to do different lenses.
Yeah, they've reused the Boba Fett mold so many times. I think the only exception was the Mandalorian, but they've done the Boba Fett helmet. They did the prototype white one. They did the Empire Strikes Back one. They're coming out with the re-armored Mandalorian Boba Fett helmet. There was another one, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was the
Death Watch helmet.
Yeah.
There's like 4 of them. There's 4 of them all using the same. They're just milking that thing, and yet they still haven't given us Django. I'm so mad.
They got to take the dent out. They can't do that one.
Yeah. Well, they did it with the Death Watch one. They took the dent out.
Okay, well, I got no excuse then.
They got no excuse. So it's like, man, just do Django already. Now they also can do Chrome, because we've seen the Mandalorian one. They could just dirty that up a bit and make a Django one.
I feel like they're just still scared to touch anything that has to do with the prequels.
Yeah, it sucks. But
I'm still waiting. Why haven't they done any of the clone helmets?
I don't know. That's the thing. Like the clone helmets would be a huge seller.
That'd be so cool, man. If they did Rex. Can you imagine if they did Rex? That'd be so cool. That's the best helmet that's ever come out of Star Wars.
Like the Rex Phase 2, like where he's got the
where he welds his own T-visor on it. So cool.
So good. So yeah, Bo-Katan Black Series helmet. There's also, of course, the Mandalorian Darksaber being released from the Hasbro Black Series as well, which is pretty cool. We all love the Hasbro Black Series stuff. So if you're a collector of those lightsabers, the Darksaber's coming out. R2D2 Tamagotchis, $30 each a pop. Canadian.
Tamagotchis. Is that the pets?
Tamagotchis.
The electronic pets?
Yes, the official Tamagotchi by Bandai. They partnered with Lucasfilm to release an R2D2 inspired Star Wars version, and it's all Star Warsified. The whole software and everything on it is completely Star Warsified. And there's 2 variations. There's a blue one and a white one of these things, and apparently they're maybe limited edition or something, which is probably what makes them so expensive. But
I was around in the 90s when that was a thing, and if you forgot to feed your electronic pet, it would die.
Yeah, I had a Gen 2. It was the first time that you could, I think, multiplayer with like other people. It had the little red band for you held it up to someone else, you could airdrop them a gift or something like that, like another Tamagotchi, right? Yeah, and you could play some games with each other and stuff like that. And man, I loved it. It was like a green one that looked like a dinosaur egg.
Yeah,
it's so classic.
Oh my gosh,
orange buttons, 3 of them at the bottom.
Do you think they'll be just as interactive and?
Oh yeah,
mortal.
Apparently they're really good. Yeah, there's some reviews out about them, and apparently it's impressing a lot of people. So
all the kids can bring them back and take them to school, have a Tamagotchi in one hand and a fidget spinner in the other.
That's right. Yeah. How long can you have R2D2 live?
That's right. How long will you remember to feed him?
That's right. The limited edition Boba Fett Razer Xbox controller. I also found out there's a Mandalorian one as well. So cool Xbox controllers from Razer with the base charging stand, everything. Expensive stuff. They're like $200 or $250 or something. It's kind of crazy, or maybe it's $150. I don't know. They're up there. They're over $150 a pop, and yeah, so a bit too much, but whatever. So we haven't done Bring Home the Bounty in a while.
It's been a while,
which is kind of why I'm bringing up some of these key items. But there's been other stuff that has been released since then. Backpacks, action figures, stuff.
Some stuff there before was a re-release. So
yeah. Some of the stuff was older that they kind of just threw up there. But I don't know. Two standout things for me, at least under the action figure list, is the Battlefront 2 Umbara Operative ARC Trooper 6-inch figure. You can pre-order that starting tomorrow, December 22nd. And they're releasing Republic Commando Boss Boss in the 6-inch series as well, and a Battlefront 2 Jet Trooper from the Republic faction. So lots of cool figures coming.
That's cool. I like when they start doing some of the old game stuff.
Yeah. Bringing back the old game, the vintage series, and yeah. They do.
Oh, did you get your George Lucas Stormtrooper yet?
I haven't. Did they release those yet?
I'm not sure. That's what I'm asking.
I'm looking for them.
I assumed they were out.
I would. I'd love to get one of those, but I just haven't seen them anywhere. So, maybe they're being all snatched up.
It might only be in the States.
Yeah, maybe. That's true. Yeah, so lots of cool stuff coming, and keep an eye on StarWars.com/Bring Home the Bounty for more releases. Of course, one of these releases. We have one more week until the whole page is complete, and you can check it on December 28th for the final week, which is week 12 of Bring Home the Bounty, and maybe they'll release something interesting that day. But one of the more standout kind of big things that they did was one of the icons for week 10, I think it is, which was last week or 2 weeks ago. It was a video game controller, and that corresponded with Star Wars Eclipse, which is we actually talked about it last time on the episode. And I'm not really big into social media, and I do run the Twitter feed, but that is pretty much as far as my kind of social awareness of what other people's thoughts are on stuff goes. And I just checked into Twitter one day, and there's this whole big thing going on about Blackout Eclipse or Blackout Star Wars Eclipse, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't really know how to approach the subject, but I just wanted to acknowledge it because it's out there. It's a thing. I haven't posted a single tweet in regards to this at all. And I noticed even Star Wars Explained, really respectable guy, Alex, runs the YouTube show. He does really great work. And even he had something to say about it, saying that they wouldn't do any coverage as long as this thing was going on. So, I guess just wanted to put it out there for anyone who's hyped for this game, because I'm pretty stoked for this game. And, I don't really have any personal gripes with anyone who's involved with making that game. And if anyone has any strong opinions about it, I'm just going to let it be. And just kind of, if this game comes out, it comes out. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. So
I guess it is pretty early. So it is possible that Lucasfilm would pull the plug on it.
It is, yeah. After all that money spent on the cinematic, it's just kind of like, cue the toilet flush right now kind of thing. But yeah, it wouldn't be the first time. So do you have any thoughts on this? Or
I looked into it a bit. I know the basics of it, that I don't know if he's like CEO or head of the whatever the game part. Mm-hmm. He I think it was like sexual harassment with a fellow employee or something. This is a French studio. And I think it was
based in France and Montreal.
Montreal
Quebec.
As well. Okay.
Yeah.
And this might be wrong, but I think I read that it went to court and there was no charges. They
dismissed it.
Yeah, basically.
Huh.
And that's as much as I know. I don't know if there was more past that or if maybe I'm mistaken on that. But
yeah, from what I understand, he has some personal opinions about how the world is. It's just apparently it's just he's the root of a very toxic work environment, and people want him gone, right? So naturally, Star Wars fans can be very scary sometimes, and let the tsunami ensue kind of thing, and now Lucasfilm has got a bit of a backed up into a corner, and I'm kind of wondering what happens next. So,
well, the weird thing to me is that if this did go to court, there's obviously a record of it. Why did they not look first?
Right. Yeah,
you'd think, especially Lucasfilm, that and being part of Disney, but even onto themselves, they're very politically progressive in this sort of way, right?
Yeah.
It's weird that they wouldn't have looked.
Right. It is odd. Yeah. I mean, stuff happens. Stuff squeaks through. And it's just a bit of a shock, all the hype for this game, and then
immediately after the trailer drops,
boom, like a week later, and it's like, are we even going to see this game? And I even have my doubts about whether or not we'd see this game about a couple days after they released this trailer. I saw an article saying that it's about 3 to 4 years away from being completed. And
wow, that long?
Yeah,
that's
and so
weird to me. They would even drop a trailer that far ahead.
Yeah, it is weird, right? Yeah. So I sent out a tweet about this, and I posted the article, or at least a snapshot of the headline. And I said, what is the likelihood that this game could be canceled in a year? Hashtag Star Wars Eclipse. That was December 14th. This was, I think, right before all the this blackout stuff started happening. And the headline read, Star Wars Eclipse is apparently at least 3 or 4 years away from launch. And I was like, okay, this is probably going to be a game we're not going to see, because any game that tends to take ages to come out, especially with the Star Wars brand, always ends up getting killed, right? Somehow, some form, some way. We did 2 episodes about canceled Star Wars, canceled as in just something that they just never decided to release to the public. And there is a tremendous amount of stuff that we had to run through for the games. Like it was over 20 items or something, and or 30 or whatever it was. And for movies and shows, it was close to 15 or whatever. But it was so much stuff. And this thing is just probably, unfortunately, going to be the next thing on that list. Yeah. So it's too bad. But
yeah, I have to say, just considering the current climate, that seems most likely what's going to happen. But it's a shame. I mean, when we talked about the gameplay, it didn't look, at least to me, from what we have come to understand, didn't seem like it would be a particularly fun game. But I thought the designs are really cool. I really want a game to come out in that prequel era, because we haven't gotten anything in like 10, 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's and it's such an interesting time period to do a game in, and like that's why I was so excited for it. And I mean, like this whole kind of movement has kind of put a damper on things, and mind you, and like I don't know, maybe it's just something I'm very self-conscious when it comes to any kind of large movement of any kind like this. But I don't know, I think in general, I think everyone has a right to say what they want to say, make their peace with something. But I mean, there is something very scary about cancel culture, like we saw the same thing happen with Gina Carano, and the fact that someone can lose their job over a lot of people who've never even met the person or whatever can just use a hashtag, and that gets retweeted, and that gets retweeted, and it's just like a cancer, man. It just spreads, and like, there's no justifying it at all. And it's just, there might be some problem to acknowledge, but and I'm sure the right people will handle it. But when you get the world kind of coming at you for something, it's just like I can't imagine being anyone working on this game to go home and know that's like the world's after your studio, your place of employment for canceling this Star Wars game that was hyped for about 3 days.
And that's the other side about it, right? Where
people's probably jobs are affected.
Yeah, there's probably like tens, if not hundreds, of people that are working on this, and just
it's
next day you find out, well, I'm probably going to lose my job now.
Yeah, exactly.
Something completely out of their control.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, and to anyone who is working on this game, because they are artists and TDs, and just anyone works in the game industry who has a shot at working on this thing, like they're probably really excited to do that, and they probably have to kept a secret for even close to a year, because that a cinematic like that, like in the trailer, would have taken a long time to do.
It was very well done.
Yeah, very well done, and it looked beautiful, and they would have had to have kept that under wraps for so long. And now the Game Awards comes out, they announce out the Game Awards, and then boom, like a week later, and you're already looking at, okay, not only is this game being come after for stuff, in relation to just the guy who founded the company, but I have nothing to do with that guy. I'm just working on the game. I'm excited to work on the game, and now I might lose my job because they might pull the plug on the game because of this whole thing, right? Just because of one guy that I have no connection to. And it's like, just to put myself in the shoes of some person who might be working on it, so to speak. But it sucks, man. Like the whole thing just sucks. So,
I mean, there's always that chance that guy gets ousted somehow and then replaced.
Yeah.
Because the issue is not the whole studio. It's just one guy who just happens to be at the top.
I mean, like the best thing I think that maybe he could do is just put out a statement saying, because, he's obviously going through some stuff. Whatever people are coming after him for, that's his business, right? It has nothing to do with like hundreds of people that he's employed to do this game for Lucasfilm. As you know, his things have nothing to do with the other people, right? Like they should not be fired and pulled work because of this dude. So he should just make a statement saying like, hey, whatever this is, like I've got nothing to do with the good people working on this this amazing game, and this is a separate issue. So I mean, I could see why, because that's the thing, like it's all about a connection, right? Like if fans don't have any way of literally sending a letter or throwing a rock through the guy's window, they'll do what they can to make him suffer, right? So the only thing they can think of is let's like ruin the game that he's behind or whatever. And it's like
that'd be a real shame.
It's a shame. I mean, it's always a shame when stuff gets canceled, right? And it's just but now other people are going to be affected if this whole thing goes south. So, fingers crossed it works out in the best way possible, whatever that is.
Agreed. I mean, at this point, all we can really do is just kind of wait it out, see what happens.
Yeah,
there's one way or the other. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so really up to Lucasfilm.
Yeah. Speaking of Lucasfilm, they were up to some funny business. Well, maybe it was Disney Parks, actually. So there's a big expansion that happened in the Galaxy Edge in Florida with Galactic Star Cruiser. And there was this really awesome teaser that they did, which, quote, it wasn't awesome at all. It was kind of cheesy. And they actually pulled the teaser from YouTube because there were just that many dislikes, and there were articles all over the internet saying,
joke's on them because YouTube hid the dislike ratio.
Yeah, it was so bad that I think internally they're like, "Okay, it's not just about the number of dislike that at least that they're seeing this video is getting, but there's news outlets reporting that this looks bad, like, and people were starting to cancel their reservations.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it went that far.
It did. Yeah, it did. So they removed this teaser trailer, and I was trying to figure out which teaser trailer this was, because I mean, I tend to keep up pretty frequently with the Disney Park / Star Wars videos, that might get posted. And in our Discord server, we actually have a really cool channel called Star Wars TV, which kind of nets all of those videos into one stream, so it's really easy to kind of stay up to date in there. But I was like, okay, have I seen this or not? And then I saw a thumbnail with the kid who was featured in it. He's an actor from the Goldbergs. I think he also played the live action version of Ron Stoppable in the Kim Possible Disney film. And he
was not expecting that.
Yeah, I found that out when I was reaching this.
Wait, you sure you didn't play the mole rat?
No. so mean. So yeah, I was like, okay. I remember that video. It was pretty bad. He's all like, oh gosh, like, oh jolly. He's just like he's a kid that came out of like the 30s or something, or the 20s. And he's talking to the host. Just the whole thing was just done badly. Like, it was just done in a way that made it look like a cheap experience. And by a cheap experience, I don't mean like a garbage experience, but what I mean by cheap is not worth $6,000 to stay for 2 nights. That's what I mean by cheap. Right.
I saw pictures of the food as well. It didn't seem like the greatest.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just Disneyland food, right? So I just like, I couldn't help but think, like, all these people canceling their reservation after seeing that video, that video kind of justified the reason to do it, I guess. And they realized we could go on a cruise ship for like 2 weeks with the same money. And then some, right? Like, might as well just do that instead. So then a 2-day experience at Disney. Only the hardcore, hardest core, most wealthiest Star Wars fans on the planet are going to be attending this thing, because there's no reviews as to how it is yet. So I think there's starting to be this kind of movement of people realizing, like, okay, yeah, there was a lot of hype for this, but that was all based on concept art and, little kind of teasers and stuff like that. And now here's like a real in-depth look at what this thing is going to be all about. And people are not liking what they're seeing. So
I was kind of expecting the first wave to be mostly people who bought tickets so they could put a review up on YouTube.
yeah. People,
Like sponsored
YouTubers
almost.
and
Like they get paid back by views, right? Or
right,
whatever.
right, exactly. And it's. I mean, I'm a mischievous person, so I went into the web archive, the time machine, shall we call it? It was a web time machine or something. The turn
That's
back,
it. The Wayback Machine.
the Wayback Machine.
That's
Yes,
what it is.
the Wayback Machine, and I found the video and managed to extract that from the Wayback Machine, from the depths of the internet, and I re-uploaded it to YouTube so that people can see this glorious teaser trailer. And I'm just waiting until it gets removed. But the funny
It's
thing
only
is,
a matter of time.
it's only
Disney
a matter
will
of time.
find it.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time. But right now it's got 191 views on it, which is not a lot, but it's kind of funny because this is literally the exact same video. It's I think it's just not 1080. I think it might be 720 instead, but it's got the same title, same description. I put it all there. And I guess I'm just waiting for it to get taken down. But the funny thing is because Disney Parks removed theirs, it's not actually conflicting with a duplicate video on YouTube. So it's the only one of its kind right now. So there's no
That's interesting.
there's no like duplicate thing. Like there's only some music in it that kind of has like a copyright thing, but because it's not monetized, it's fine. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of laughing as I was doing it, and
just a matter of time till some lawyer at Disney is sitting there this morning drinking his coffee and spits all over his screen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that lawyer is listening to us right now, and he's looking up that video. If that lawyer were to find it. What was that?
Probably an hour after this podcast hits the air, that video will be removed.
yeah, exactly. We'll have to send out a global update next week on the show or something like that. But if anyone were to find it, you can find us on YouTube. And of course, just type in Star Wars Escape Pod. We got a channel up and running. There's nothing on there yet except for the glorious teaser that got pulled from the Disney parks. So if you want to give it one last view, see what all the ruckus is about, you can before it gets pulled. You're welcome. You're welcome, internet.
Just your humble pirates and smugglers here helping you out.
Yeah, exactly. So there's another two last minute things actually before we move on to the main meat. Is two books dropping. One of them is a book called Star Wars Be More Boba Fett. Nothing crazy. Drops today, actually. And it's a fun pocket-sized book packed with inspiration from the galaxy's most famous bounty hunter. So I guess it's Boba Fett quotes of inspiration, which is such a great character to look up to and be like. If you want to give your kids,
it is so quotable from his 4 lines of dialogue across 2 movies.
a whole 9 to 5. A whole 5 to 9 pages worth of. No, I'm just kidding. 64 pages worth. So yeah.
Oh, but they must include Clone Wars then.
I think it must be. Yeah. I don't really know what this is all about, honestly. Like it's kind of a strange idea for a book.
It is. I feel like they're just trying to milk this Boba Fett thing as much as they can before they move on. Like, I bet it was the exact same thing if we went back in time and we're paying attention right before Solo came out, for example. It's probably the same thing.
This is actually in a series called Star Wars Be More ... They've done one for Vader, Yoda, Lando, Leia, and Obi-Wan, and then they've got a box set with all the previous ones in it. And
they didn't do Han.
Collected wisdom from a galaxy far, far away. Yeah. What's up with that? Hey, no Han, but they've done Lando.
Yeah, no Anakin
Leia.
either.
They've done Vader. Like what does Vader have to say? What do you? Assertive thinking from the dark side. That's what it's called.
So they'll teach kids to turn to their teachers, and when they're angry, you don't know the power of the dark side.
Dude, these books are insane. I gotta look at these one day. Look at this. Look at this description, the publisher's summary. I'm skipping a bunch of stuff, but the third section down, it says, find out how to get a promotion, beat the competition, manage difficult employees, and move from intern to CEO with top tips from Star Wars, be more like Vader, and the most powerful villains in the Star Wars universe.
This is a self-help book? What is this?
Yeah.
Self-help by Darth Vader. What could possibly go wrong?
Man, how crazy would it be if CEO of a company just said, I got successful because I read that book. All right, let's move on to Marvel's Han Solo and Chewbacca series coming March 2022. Han Solo and Chewbacca, a new series from Marvel, will launch March 2022 next year. Of course, that's not too far away. And it's written by Mark Guggenheim, penciled by David Messina, I believe. And the monthly comic follows Han and Chewie a few years before the events of A New Hope. So it follows their appearances in Solo, A Star Wars Story, as the duo teams up with Greedo in better times, apparently on a heist for Jabba the Hutt. StarWars.com caught up with Guggenheim to talk about the tension with Han, what he has planned for our favorite nerf herder and walking carpet, and how Star Wars changed his life. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. I'm gonna drop the description in the a link in the description of the podcast episode, so you guys can read it for yourself. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, this kind of follows the events of Solo a little bit. So anyone who was hoping for Solo 2, I don't know if it's in the cards anymore now that they're doing this comic book series. But it's kind of neat, at least, that the story gets to continue. And I think it's a neat idea.
Because this Solo movie came out like 3 years ago now, 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think they just woke up one day and they were like, you know what? Solo 2 is never going to happen. Let's just start writing stories with Han Solo and Chewie after the events of Solo and leading up to A New Hope, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought it would go in that direction, especially after Mandalorian went so well. But I guess most likely what happened is once Dave and Jon Favreau kind of got the reins, there just wasn't they already had so many shows lined up, right? There just wasn't room for it on the lineup.
Exactly. So those of you wanting Solo 2, you can look for it in Han Solo and Chewbacca from Marvel Comics next year in spring. And now let's move on to our feature presentation. And this is a great subject. And we're going to be reading through some articles that were published a long time ago, written by Dave Filoni and Bryan Young, Finding Middle-earth in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. That's just the title I came up with, but I thought it was a very appropriate title because of the nature of the subject. And The Lord of the Rings means a lot to you, right?
Yes, it does.
Now, I'm not exactly a pro or an expert on any of the Middle-earth stuff when it comes to speaking about those stories. I mean, I've seen the movies quite a few times. I've read The Hobbit more than once, and I've listened on audio to maybe a quarter or half of the Children of Hurin, and that is pretty much the extent of it. I own a variety of RPG books called The One Ring, published by Cubicle 7, and it's a good game. I myself, I do really love Lord of the Rings. I don't know if I'm super far enough in the investment of my time and appreciation enough to call myself a fan, but I like to think of myself as I don't know, a fan deep down. I know for sure that there is a Josh out there in the multiverse or something that is, that's his thing. It's Lord of the Rings, because this universe is so big and the world of Middle Earth is so detailed. And if I'm a sucker for anything, it's a fictional story and world that has a lot of detail in it. And none other than Mr. J.R.R. Tolkien himself is the builder and the maker of that world, much like how George Lucas is known as the maker of Star Wars and A Galaxy Far, Far Away. Ironically enough, they actually share a lot of ties. And when I say share a lot of ties, I mean Star Wars feeding off of Lord of the Rings as inspiration. And it's a lot of thanks to Tolkien of being one of the first of his kind to really do what he did and make such a detailed world and such a detailed story that so much came out of. And even today we're seeing the results of that. I mean, you know, with the Amazon show around the corner, that's going to be featured in the Second Age of Middle Earth, and you know, lots of republished works from Tolkien, edited by his son Christopher Tolkien, who passed away not that long ago, and now you know, friends, close, trusted people of the Tolkien estate, I would imagine, editing his current works. The Nature of Middle Earth, I believe, comes out next year or something like that. It's and they keep grabbing these from the history of Middle Earth, I believe, which is basically just this giant, massive thing that I guess he wrote, which is the a detailed kind of beginning to end story of the events that happen in this fictional place.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go as far back as just talking about the initial novels that came out by Tolkien, it's inspired pretty well the entire fantasy genre, because that directly inspired Dungeons and Dragons, and then that also branched off into pretty well all of the fantasy films and novels that we got since like the would have been the 73 or 74, I think, was like the first Dungeons and Dragons. So that inspired so many other people to do fantasy stuff, and it's kind of just all trickled out. If you trace it back, it'll all the branches will all meet together at the original Lord of the Rings novels.
Right. And even before The Lord of the Rings was published, there was The Hobbit. And so I want to first bring up this article by Dave Filoni, which was written December 14th, 2012, and published on the Star Wars blog, starwars.com. Links in the description for anyone who wants to follow along, but I'm just going to give this a quick read. This is Dave Filoni speaking in the letter. I will never forget the bookshelf my parents kept in our living room when I was growing up. My parents are avid readers, so they collected books on world cultures, art, architecture, opera, natural history, and world history. From this vast selection of topics, there was a series of 3 books packaged together in a special box that always drew my attention. When I pulled one out, I found a strange red eye looking at me, surrounded by a field of black, with bizarre red writing around the edge of the circle. At the top was what appeared to be 4 flames licking upward towards an inverted ring. The binding read, The Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien. Maybe it was the creepy eye or the strange cursive writing, but I knew I liked these books right away. Even though I found the design a bit intimidating at the time, my mother saw me looking at them and asked if I was interested in reading them. I said I was, and after some consideration, she decided I was still a bit too young for these volumes. However, there was a book she thought would be perfect for me, The Hobbit. My mother read the entire volume to my brother and me. It was a great addition. The cover was leather, and inlaid gold writing, and the pictures of trees with distant mountains. Inside, there were color plates painted by Tolkien himself. My favorite, of course, was the one of Smaug the dragon. Reading The Hobbit, and later on Lord of the Rings, filled me with the same type of wonder and inspiration that I got from watching Star Wars. I loved these worlds and the characters in them, and I always wanted more. Fast forward many years, and I find myself working on Star Wars The Clone Wars with George Lucas. Through this incredible work experience, you get to meet other people that have similar interests. You always have to be ready, because you never know who will drop by. One day, I was talking to then CG supervisor, Andrew Harris. These were the early days of 2005, so we had some rough concepts of what we were doing, but no real scripts yet, and no actual renders of animation. In the middle of our conversation, our receptionist, Chris Donovan, came into the office and said that George was looking for us. That was strange, because it was not a George day. Chris said George had brought a visitor. A couple of visitors, in fact. Well, that was even stranger. During that time, we worked behind the main house at Skywalker Ranch, almost in secret. It wasn't often we got visitors, so who could it be? I went to the bottom of the stairs and looked across the production room when George found me and said, "Oh, there you are. I've been looking for you. I want to show you, Peter, what you've been doing previous." Yes, you've probably guessed correctly. George's guest was Peter Jackson, director of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Stabilizing my mind, we went into my office and we fired up my computer so I could show Peter the action scene when the ATTEs climb the cliff on Teth. It was really early in the version of the scene, but I told the story well enough. I had to walk him and George through our entire process and how we got to where we were in editorial. The team from Weta Workshop was with Peter and was very supportive of our efforts. In those early days of trying to figure out our series, I think their response to our work was really appreciated by my crew. There was a real mutual understanding and respect between everyone there. We were all big fans of The Lord of the Rings, and they were big fans of Star Wars. Even better for our crew was the fact that George seemed to like what we were doing enough to bring Peter Jackson by and show him. That was a big deal, and a real confidence booster. A couple of years later, Mary Franklin brought a friend of hers from Weta by the animation studio. This is when I met Daniel Falconer, one of the designers from the Lord of the Rings films. It turns out he has some friends that had a Clone Wars night where they would get together and watch episodes. My team and I were always really valued the support we got from Daniel and his team. And over the years, we would trade emails and thoughts on Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. I appreciate the challenges that different creative teams in our industry face, and I always enjoy seeing the results of their hard work. It's even better when you know that the effort you are watching is backed by great people who truly care about the work that they're doing. There seems to be a bond between these two worlds, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. And the people that watch and create these stories, I guess, we just all love the sense of adventure, the sense of wonder, and the feeling of hope that we get from these stories. Whether it be facing a stampede of Oliphants or a squadron of attacking ATs, these are the stories we all grew up with. And we are fortunate to live in a time where we can get jobs telling these stories and passing them on to future generations. In appreciation for Daniel and the crew at Weta, and for their relationship Lucasfilm and Peter Jackson have had over the years, I created this image of Gandalf and Yoda. And on the article at the very top is a picture of Gandalf and Yoda smoking a pipe together on a log. He also says, "Congratulations on the opening of The Hobbit. I hope it is a great success, and I look forward to the next 2 installments. As your roads go ever on, the Force will be with you always." Dave Filoni, everyone. A very touching article and paying homage to, of course, his love for The Lord of the Rings and the films that came after. And I think what he's trying to say is those who tend to appreciate The Lord of the Rings also tend to appreciate Star Wars in some way, shape, or form.
I had no idea that, on the regards to the story, I had no idea that Peter Jackson showed up and actually saw an early screening of the Clone Wars. That's pretty neat that he was that interested in doing it. And I didn't even know that him and George were like in contact. Like, I figured they crossed each other's paths, you know, when you're at that level of like artistic control of franchises and directors and stuff. But I didn't think that they would like send an email like, "Oh yeah, come on over, working on a cartoon, you should take a look."
Yeah, it's so cool, right? Like I guess maybe he was just in the area, or maybe him and a bunch of people from Weta, maybe friends of his, were just in the area, right? And maybe I mean, it's George Lucas, right? I mean, maybe that was their second or third time meeting. I'm assuming this is just a wild guess. I'm just assuming that when George was doing the prequels and Peter Jackson was doing the Lord of the Rings, because they kind of came out within the same time frame, that there was some sort of first introduction there that may have happened.
I could see there being overlap, yeah, because they came out, I think, Phantom Menace and
it was Fellowship
was like a year or two apart. I think it was 2 years apart.
Because Fellowship was 2001.
2001.
I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, 2 years.
Phantom Menace is 99. So it's 2 years.
And then you had Attack of the Clones in 2002 with Two Towers, I think. coming out. Was it that year?
Yeah, I think they came out pretty consecutively because they filmed the whole thing in one go, like nonstop.
Right. Yeah, and then by 2005, it was Star Wars Episode 3. So you kind of had the Lord of the Rings trilogy come out within the time frame of the entire prequel trilogy.
Man, what a golden age to go to the cinema.
Oh man, yeah, I mean, just randomly to toss it in there. I mean, you had the first Harry Potter,
yeah,
the Spider-Man films, the first X-Men's, the Matrix films. Like,
I tell you, man, if you could have Groundhog Day, and these were like the best CG to ever come out, but we're still getting lots of practical stuff. So it was like this. I think it was a golden age personally because you got a great mix of both, as opposed to now where it's all CG, and previous to that where they were limited to only physical and like props
totally.
and stuff. I still think a lot of the Lord of the Rings shots, barring some of the rough CG stuff, like some of the Schmeagol, for example, barring some of that, I think a lot of the Lord of the Rings special effects and stuff still looks better than what we see today.
Yeah, you know, and it's all an art form too. I mean, they both the prequels and the Lord of the Rings trilogy used a lot of they used a lot of digital effects, but they also used a lot of models, a lot of practical model effects. And these models were just amazing, just beautiful to look at, and really worth a look into the behind the scenes. If you ever come across the book in a chapter is called Middle Earth from script to screen, I think it is. It's a great look at what exactly kind of goes into some of these things that they've done for the sets and the miniatures, and of course if you have the Blu-rays, you can look at the behind the scenes of all this stuff, and it's mind-boggling just how much miniature work that was done for a lot of the very vast and extensive backgrounds and buildings and stuff that they had to do for a lot of these shots.
Yeah, they didn't do miniatures; they did what they called bigatures.
Yeah, bigatures. Yeah. So they were like massive, scaled models, right?
Yeah. So the one that always blows my mind is I think it was Isengard as well, but Sauron's tower specifically, they built that out of foam and is 3 stories tall.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Can you imagine just carving 3 stories worth of detailed foam and then painting it?
Dude, that is a lot of foam. Well, we got a second article to run through here, written by Bryan Young, also on StarWars.com. This was published March 13th in 2016, and it's called The Cinema Behind Star Wars: The Lord of the Rings. Discover the many connections between these two epic sagas, including the influence of Gandalf on Ahsoka and much more. Peter Jackson's films, based on J.R.R. Tolkien's masterwork, The Lord of the Rings trilogy, were released in 2001, 2002, 2003. They tell the story of the Fellowship of Men, Elves, Dwarves, and Hobbits, led by the mysterious wizard Gandalf, and their quest to destroy the Ring of Power before the absolute symbol of evil, the Dark Lord of Sauron. Each installment of the trilogy, both in the books and the films, contains the same sort of adventure, politics, and archetypical heroes and villains of Star Wars. We explore in the column of the trilogy's parallels with the original films and the impact it's had on the Star Wars saga. Before Peter Jackson's films would inspire the more recent installments of Star Wars, George Lucas certainly took inspiration from Tolkien's work in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. In early drafts of the Star Wars screenplay, Luke even has a line of dialogue lifted directly from the books, though it never made it to the final film. Luke Skywalker and Frodo Baggins share many aspects of their journeys together. Both are reluctant to leave, but they're prodded into action by a mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Gandalf the Grey, and both must face the most evil creatures their world can throw at them. Along the way, they become heroes who face many challenges and have to rely on their friends for help. In fact, both Luke Skywalker and Frodo Baggins meet their most roguish allies in bars. Han Solo can be found at the Cantina on Mos Eisley, and Strider can be found at the Prancing Pony in Bree. These characters whisk our heroes away to the next part of their adventure and have to heed their own calls to the journey as well. The most direct comparison, though, is in the mentor characters. The scene where Obi-Wan Kenobi sacrifices himself aboard the Death Star so that our band of rebels can escape with their lives can be seen as an almost direct parallel to the Fellowship of the Ring and Gandalf's fight with the Balrog. Vader makes sense as the Balrog, as Gandalf explains to the Fellowship. This foe is beyond any of you. And Vader had certainly proven that the same could be said of him by that point in A New Hope. But Obi-Wan is, just like Gandalf the White, able to come back in some form with a new power to help at a later point in the series. Moving back to the prequel trilogy, Anakin is Frodo in totality, leaving on a quest for good, corrupted by the power of the dark, and brought back by the love of his companions. It might not be a coincidence that the ending of Revenge of the Sith and The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King both occur around lava and volcanoes. This metaphor of hell and deals with devils is universal to the stories. Taking this a step further, you can draw a connection between Vader tossing Palpatine into the pits of the Death Star to Gollum tossing both himself and the Ring of Power into the lava of Mount Doom. Like Gollum and Smeagol, Vader was also a character of split personality, of good and evil between the poles of Anakin Skywalker and his Darth Vader persona. There are many more connections between Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings, but none may be as direct as Sir Christopher Lee. He played Saruman in The Lord of the Rings and Count Dooku in the second and third episode of the classic Star Wars saga. Both characters he played in these two series were good characters who are corrupted by evil, sometime in the events before the films. Both characters maintain a ruse of being good until it is no longer expedient, and both are forced into wizards' duels when their true nature is revealed. Both get the upper hand on their opponents, Dooku against Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Yoda, Saruman against Gandalf. He wasn't the only actor to cross over from The Lord of the Rings to Star Wars. Bruce Spence, who played the mouth of Sauron, was Tion Medon in Revenge of the Sith. C-3PO's Anthony Daniels even got a shot at playing Legolas, providing the voice for the Elvish warrior in the 1978 animated version of The Lord of the Rings. But another direct comparison and inspiration from The Lord of the Rings on Star Wars is Ahsoka Tano. At New York Comic Con last year, this is, of course, the 2015 New York Comic Con, Star Wars Rebels executive producer Dave Filoni says of Ahsoka, "She serves the story because you can't just bring Darth Vader into this crew, because he'd kill them. They need a Gandalf. Ahsoka shows up when necessary. She's dealing with bigger and darker problems. And when the former Jedi arrives to help, it is in very much the same way as Gandalf. In the middle of Season 2, Ahsoka arrives to save Kanan and Ezra from the Inquisitors in a moment that certainly echoes a light side version of Darth Maul's arrival in The Phantom Menace, but the blinding light of goodness behind her instead, just as Gandalf's arrival at Helm's Deep, with the Rohan army and the blinding sun to his back, to face off against the army of Saruman. Gandalf the Grey's resurrection as Gandalf the White bears similarities to Ahsoka as well, though hers was much more metaphorical. During her time with the Jedi, Ahsoka bore green lightsabers, then blue. But after her exile and return, she acquired sabers that glow white. It all fits with Dave Filoni's description of her as Gandalf. I'd also like to include the fact that by the end of Star Wars Rebels, Ahsoka even wears a white robe and holds a white cane. Filoni and crew have been long inspired by the work of Peter Jackson too. In 2012, on the eve of the release of the first installment of the Hobbit trilogy, Filoni wrote a piece explaining the back and forth inspiration between the crew of the Clone Wars and the Lord of the Rings. We just read it. The most recent influence from the Lord of the Rings on Star Wars might be seen in The Force Awakens. In the Lord of the Rings films, each time the Ring of Power is dropped, it's accompanied by a thud and hits the ground with a weight that bellies its size. There's a moment in The Force Awakens where Kylo Ren drops his helmet, and it feels just like dropping the Ring of Power in everything from the angle of the shot, the weight of the object, to the sound. And really, both Kylo Ren's mask and the Ring of Power represent much the same themes in the stories, right? So he poses with that question, and I'd like to just say, yeah, I think it's definitely worth making that comparison. And it's tough to say as to what JJ intended for that scene, but regardless whether or not he pulled that from Lord of the Rings or not, there's just a very similar artistic style as to how to portray this thing that holds so much weight in the power of darkness. So what do you think of all those similarities?
Like, I did not realize there was that many. Like, I kind of knew like the basis, like the hero's journey part. I didn't put, and like in regards to that, like you get like Obi-Wan and Gandalf, right? They're both like get the unsuspected person out on an adventure, and then they die before their time, and they both come back in another way to try to help out
With greater power.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder though, when Obi-Wan says that line, "I'll come back," you know, be like stronger than you could ever imagine or whatever. And then that never really, like, he comes back as a ghost, he helps Luke, but he doesn't really have more power technically, right? Makes me wonder if another draft.
You could be right. Yeah, you could be right in the sense that it was intended that he did come back, like physically, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I think it might have been intended that the power he speaks of is really the immortality of maintaining his identity after death and being able to guide Luke Skywalker.
That's true. I mean, it is plausible that he also would still be able to sense it and speak over like the comms, but yeah, I definitely, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and in that fight as well, I mean, you know, I mean, we know that that movie it's an older movie, so the choreography of the fight wasn't exactly the peak standards of what it could be, I guess, compared to the newer films. But you know, he's also an older man, Obi-Wan, and from Rogue One, we know for sure that Vader still got it. You know, he still got it in him to I guess kill him quickly if that's need be. And Obi-Wan is just this is a guy who's spent years in the desert, you know, and probably not seen that much action, withering away. I mean, apparently.
Well, so we're led to believe until this new Obi-Wan series comes out.
Right. Yeah. I guess we'll see what happens there. Yeah. But I mean, this is a guy who's gone through a lot of pain as well. Like he's failed his apprentice, and his, you know, the Republic and the Jedi Order are gone, and he's only got one purpose in life, and it's to protect Luke, right? So, you know, the greater power that he ends up possessing is also, as we know from the Clone Wars, is something that very, very few can achieve. It's something that you need to almost be elected for by the Force priestesses and given the right to maintain your identity after death and have to go through all the training and everything like that, right? So
that's true. I will say he did prove to still be competent in battle by killing Darth Maul in a single strike.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. A couple years, I guess, before A New Hope starts. But yeah, that is true. Gandalf is his species is what are they called again?
I know he's basically an angel.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it though.
The Istari.
Yeah, that's it.
The Istari. So the Istari are also I guess, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for?
They're like demigods.
Yeah, they're also they're chosen. Like they're sent into Middle Earth to help
mankind.
Yeah, to help mankind, right? Much like, I guess, the Jedi would look upon themselves as being chosen to use their abilities to protect the people of the galaxy and be the peacekeepers that the galaxy needs to maintain balance, right? So there's a similarity there as well between the Jedi as being these Force wizards and, of course, the wizards of Middle Earth. So you put any Jedi into the place of Obi-Wan or like Ahsoka in her I mean, heck, they even ended off Star Wars Rebels with her with a white cane and a white robe, exactly like Gandalf, right? Like,
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
like Dave Filoni is, you know, he is so inspired by Middle Earth, by Lord of the Rings, that like these connections are everywhere. And yeah, it's pretty nuts. It's like it makes you think, just like as time goes by. I mean, Star Wars is gonna be, it's eternal. Like no one's ever gonna forget about Star Wars, right? Like 100 years is gonna go by, people are gonna remember Star Wars. But even more so, 100 years will go by, and people are still gonna be talking about Lord of the Rings, right? Like it's a classic.
Do you think it's reached the equivalency at this point of, say, like Homer, like the ancient Greek works and the Roman works, etc., etc.?
Yeah, I think in their own way they have reached a certain pinnacle, right? I mean, like the society of today and pop culture has never quite existed the way it ever has before. So we're really looking at a whole new world ahead of us that's almost built upon the foundation of these medias and these stories that are now so iconic, right? And if you look at anything from video games to films or whatever, I mean, like everything's kind of like Netflix is doing games now, and movie companies are making game companies are making movies, like, you know, Uncharted movie. It was PlayStation Studios, like, you know, what the heck? I mean, it's this weird world of every company is now doing games and movies, and now they're hiring people to write books in their universes and all this and that, and I mean, all of this is just all inspired by creating deep lore and deep universes. And if it wasn't for Tolkien, like, you wouldn't have anything of the sorts. I don't think there's anything prior to Middle Earth that exists which has as much detail in it, unless you start really getting into Greek mythology and stuff. But you know, in a way, you know, a lot of the Greeks and stuff, like, that was also their religion and stuff, right? But if you're looking at a fictional, intentionally fictional world, you know, done by scratch and by one guy, Middle Earth is the vessel of what carries that torch, right? And out of that, you have so many other stories that have been inspired by that series and by the diversity and the spans of those legends, right? And you know, Star Wars is no different. You know, like, if you compare movie to book, like, you get a lot of those similarities, like what we were talking about. But when you really compare the lore of all of these extra things, I mean, you layer Clone Wars and Rebels and all these books, whether they're canon or not, like, they all add to this greater universe, is what Star Wars fans call just the expanded universe, right? And it's this insane level of, you know, there's thousands and thousands of Wikipedia pages. I mean, you know, even the hardcorest Star Wars fan, you know, has probably not read all of it. or doesn't know everything, and you know, even I got to do my own research sometimes to just brush up on a topic or two, or even if I'm like, hey, let's do this, and you know, I start looking into it, I'm like, wow, I find myself going down a rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden there's all these things that I just never knew about before. So you know, and in a way of talking about it like that, I'm sure you and you actually feed off me and probably learn a lot as well. But you know, it's thanks to Mr. Tolkien that we even have worlds that are that detailed, and also, you know, written with the intention of pleasing kind of a more youthful audience. So really, it's the fantasy genre is really truly something else, and it really kind of originates there. When you start to look back at old works, though, Shakespeare, you know, there's story threads there, because I guess some of the Shakespearean things are a bit kind of more fantasy, you know, with witches and such. But you know, you start to kind of make comparisons with those stories, and you can definitely find them Like the whole prequel trilogy, the downfall of the Jedi, it's all very Shakespearean in itself. So like there's that, and the variety of other things, including of course Anakin's turn to the dark side and struggle and seeking for power. Very, I think it's Macbeth. I think seeking his power. It's kind of crazy just how these stories, these folklore, these legends, whatever you want to call them, kind of go around the wheel and get reinvented by people and inspired to make new things, and it just keeps going around and around that way. But Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, like they're just these very two iconic things. They're just gonna stick to that wheel for a very long time, and in 100 years from now, people are still gonna be remembering those very fondly.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think we're already at that point. I think we are seeing people reference this stuff. George himself. I'd say George himself was referencing like the old cowboy movies and the samurai films, right? It's kind of the same idea.
Oh yeah, for sure. The old samurai films, Japanese cinema, which was some of the first stuff that he was exposed to in film school, and old westerns and stuff. All based in American cinema, of course, with the old westerns. So yeah, there's a lot that obviously you throw into the mix. George grew up on a farm. He's an American guy. Throwing the Old West, that's right up his alley. Japanese cinema, something he was introduced to at school, film school, and very artistic and everything. And that plays up into Star Wars as well. And the whole fantasy genre, and it's crazy. Like there's so many things in that blender, and when you look at all the little ingredients that make Star Wars, I think that's why it's so special. That's why people love Star Wars, because they get to find things, and they keep finding things in that story. And very much like Middle Earth, like Star Wars has become so vast, and it's not just because of George Lucas. There's now many storytellers involved in making that galaxy so much bigger. So there's a lot of people to thank for how rich this story can get.
One step further, he wrote. You ever heard of the Red Book?
Oh, Tolkien's Red Book. It's vague.
Yeah. So Tolkien created his own. You can almost think of it as like a lost transcript or like a Bible that he created for the Lord of the Rings universe that he referenced when writing the book. So it was like he wrote.
Like the history of the world.
So the idea when he wrote Lord of the Rings, this is something I learned recently I thought was really cool. When the idea was he wasn't writing Lord of the Rings as an original creation, he was transcribing it from another language of an ancient work that he found. But he wrote the ancient work. So that's why the beginning of both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, you see it as Frodo is writing the novel, or Bilbo is writing There and Back Again, right?
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so the idea was it's from their perspective, which was transcribed from a point of view of the history that happened.
That's really cool. I don't think anyone else has ever been known to have done that. I know George did kind of have an outline for his movies for what he was going to do, but it wasn't down to the very nitty-gritty details of how the world works, and whereas I'm sure Tolkien's entire Red Book, this massive manuscript thing, I'm sure it had way more stuff in it than George's like 2-page yellow page note pages of what was going to be the plot points of all the different episodes for Star Wars. But it's still, the inspiration there though exists, right? And you plan your story out, right? And you build that world, so when he did the first movie, he knew that he was going to do or have this giant event called the Clone Wars. And it's crazy to think about that an animated TV show in 2008 that was launched was mentioned in a movie from 1977. But that's just a good storyteller. It's just someone who knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah. So, Tolkien is such a master at what he does that, he didn't just know what he was doing. Like he was almost like experiencing and living what he was doing, because he would invent languages, like whole whole languages and stuff to have in that world as well, which is absolutely nuts. Like someone can learn and speak Elvish, and that's baffling to me. There's also a lot of similarities when you think about it. When you think about the ring, the One Ring, and Frodo being chosen for being responsible for that, and you look at Anakin Skywalker and this chosen one prophecy, and when you start really kind of comparing the two to carry this burden on their shoulders, there really is a lot of similarities there. And then of course that expands further into other stories. Now the chosen one thing comes up a lot. Harry Potter, and beyond that, like so many other stories now, there's always a chosen one. But it's it really is so true. Like all these stories and stuff, they mean a lot to people, and sometimes I think like they mean a lot to people because they're so real. Like people can escape to these fantasy lands and almost live out their imaginations, right? And it's something that, well, they're important, and stories are universal. Every culture has stories to tell, and these stories can form the basis as to how we think about our world and how we live our lives. And they can mean a whole lot more. They preserve culture. They can pass on knowledge, and they can pass stories within those stories that keep things alive. They're timeless. They can link to traditions, to myths and legends and archetypes, and they connect us to universal truths about ourselves and the world that we live in. And it's through stories that we can share passions and fears and joys and sadness and hardships and hope and these things that we love in adventure. We find common ground with people that we can connect and communicate with them about. I mean, look at us hosting this podcast together, talking about something that I guess in 1977 just used to be one movie. And stories convey meaning and purpose, and they mean a lot to people. And when you have a rich universe, it's just all that more lifelike and believable, and something you can just invest in and love from beginning to end. So here's to all the Star Wars and Lord of the Rings fans out there. And Blake, is there anything last minute you want to bring up before we hit the outro?
Just that I'm glad it's that time of year again, because this is when I usually sit down and watch Lord of the Rings, and usually Star Wars as well. So, and then on top of that, I get to watch the new Boba Fett series, so it's a good time.
All right, thank you guys so much for coming back with us on this ride in Star Wars Escape Pod once again. And as always, you guys know the best way to help us out is by sending this link, the podcast, to a friend, dropping a 5-star review, even giving us a few words of kindness on your Apple podcast app or wherever. If you're using a podcast platform that can leave reviews, that would be a huge help, because it helps other people discover the show. It's all to do with the algorithms that bump up the shows that get more reviews, and it's honestly, I kind of wish that they worked out in my favor, but it's just up to you guys. It's up to our listeners to share and rate this show, and we don't have very many ratings, so more would be fantastic if you can do that for us. We love doing this podcast, and we hope you guys do too. We probably have maybe one episode more before the new year. Likely an after show for the Book of Boba Fett, of course, which is right around the corner. We also have plans to do our possible, I don't know if it's become an annual thing or not, but we'd love to start doing this annual Ultimate Star Wars Trivia competition between us on the show. We're gonna try and bring on as many people as we can to get involved and make a bit of a game show out of it. So you can look forward to that and follow along at home, trying to answer these multiple choice questions and see if you can compete with with us here at Star Wars Escape Pod. So until next time, I guess that's pretty much all we got. And once again, I guess next week, until the Book of Boba Fett premiere, keep an eye out next week for that Bring Home the Bounty webpage. All those new those things coming out in relation to Star Wars merchandise. Lots to look forward to. And I hope all of you guys enjoy your marathons, you know, whether it be Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. Maybe some of you guys, of course, do Star Wars every year. Please feel free to shoot us an email, feedback, comments, anything. Our email is swescapepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on our Twitter and Instagram at swescapepodcast. And of course, join the Discord link. It's in the description below, along with the articles that we read today and more close-up look at the Han Solo Chewbacca Marvel series coming to you in March next year. So, until next episode, have a Merry, Merry Christmas, everybody, and may the Force be with you.